All right, when I worked in bars, I really loved to catch fake IDs. It's just one person in about 90 would present me with a bullshit ID, and I just loved finding that one person. And most of the time it was pretty obvious. You look at their facial features, you look at the quality of the ID, and you can pretty much tell, but there were always every few weeks there'd be a borderline call. And the question always was, is this person lying to me, or are they just a fucking idiot? And for example, and you build up, you only have about a minute to grill somebody, otherwise your boss gets pissed off, the customers get pissed off. But in that minute, you try to accumulate enough information about the person to decide idiot or lying. And generally, when you can't decide, it's because you have, among your facts are enough facts to support either argument and not enough facts on one side to knock out the other argument. For instance, this kid, I'm working at a biker bar, and this kid gives me an ID that seems iffy, so I have him sign his name, including his middle name. He misspells his middle name, but he's a redneck, he's kind of a hillbilly, and his middle name is Ulysses. So I'm still stuck, because like that fact, like, I can imagine somebody who's not, I mean, how often does he use his middle name? And it's a weird name. And there was some other stuff, but that was the fact that really boggled me out of everything. Now, we were talking about Islam, and I checked a couple things, like Aisha, who's the 9-year-old that Muhammad married, that you say is the reason that Islam is a religion of 9-year-old banging. And I didn't do much looking, but I did a little looking, and it looks like one of those clumps of facts where there are arguments to be made to the other side. That, I mean, just as the Bible is full of iffy translations, it's not entirely clear that Aisha was 9 years old. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that kind of indicates that Islam is not a religion of 9-year-old banging, just based on this Aisha deal.
May I respond?
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of talking.
Okay. Glad you brought that up, Rick. Because it turns out that the Muslims are hip to all these bizarre things in their religion. And what they've been doing for the past 40 years is rewriting the English versions of the Quran. And what they do is they know that hardly any Americans or Western people read Arabic. So there's an Arabic version of the Quran, and there are English versions. The English versions take out all the crazy stuff, all the 109 verses that say that West unbelievers should be killed. They change Aisha's age from 9 to 14. But in the Arabic versions, they stay with all that stuff. In fact, if you were to buy a Quran that was published in the 1940s in English, it would still have all that stuff in it. And if you go to an Arab country and buy it in Arabic, it'll still have all that stuff in it. And that's why the people that are cutting heads off in Iraq, the ISIS, those are the true Muslims. They're doing that because that's what their version of the Quran says.
Well, hold on.
And that's the correct version.
Hold on. They consider themselves the true Muslims.
Okay.
And in fact, there's you you can attach fundamentalists to their, whatever their deal is, but there's an argument to be made that whatever the majority of people believe or however the majority of people act, that's the true face of the religion.
Well, let me ask you a question, Rick.
You don't base Christianity on, I know this is an argument doomed to fail, but you don't base your evaluation of Christianity on the worst people who call themselves Christians.
No, but they have Quranic verses that justify what they're doing. You can go. There are no biblical versions that say thou shalt rape children, but Moses didn't rape a child, but Muhammad did. Moreover,
hold on, but let me get back to my general argument with the fake ID, which is that you listen to lectures on this stuff like many hours a day.
Okay.
And they're mostly from conservative sources.
Yeah.
And when you go to court as a juror or as anybody in court, you're trying to find a pattern of fact, a set of facts that establish to a certain level of certainty what happened. And in a lot of the things you argue, out of the smorgasbord of facts, some contradictory, some the people you listen to pick the most damning facts.
Well, all you have to do, I ordered, because I'm sick and tired of listening to, of reading the bad versions of the Quran, the ones that have been edited. I actually, just this week, ordered a Quran published in the 1940s. I'll tell you why. Because up until about 5 years ago, the Penguin version hadn't been sanitized. But now they got to the Penguin version. So you have to order something that was published decades ago. And my point is, I'm not hearing some weird conservative version of the Quran. I'm just reading the Quran that is their religion. There is no precept in the Jewish religion.
I'm sure
thou shalt cut off the heads of prisoners.
All right, so here's the liberal argument.
I'm making my argument based on what they really believe, what is in their religion.
All right, so I'm going to make the liberal argument. I'm sure.
But wait, there's more.
Let me make mine, and then you can shoot it down, because I'm sure.
Okay.
I just came up with this, but just the way it sounds, I'm sure that it's an argument that's been made a lot before.
Let's hear it.
Which is, you look in the Bible, and it's got all these weird things about, dietary laws and what you can and can't do when you're menstruating, and and then the next step in the argument is that we don't have to follow all that stuff now, that stuff was written 2,000 and more years ago, and times change and ways of life change, and you can't damn a religion based on some of the hinky stuff that was written down 1,500 years ago.
Can I respond?
Yeah, and that's a standard. I would bet is that a standard liberal argument?
Well, no, here's the standard argument. What they'll tell you, what the liberal will say is, what about all those verses in the Bible that say you should be stoned to death for adultery and all this you should be allowed to keep slaves. All of those things were eliminated at the time they were written, within the period that they were written. In other words, they didn't start. They agreed that it was a stupid idea to stone people to death. So they historically, those who have studied it believe that they could pay a fine. In other words, they stopped doing that early on.
So, but hold on. You just argued that starting in the 40s or a little later, last 50 years or so, they've been sanitizing certain versions of the Quran.
The English versions, versions that are not in Arabic.
But you're saying there's still a secret, only if you speak Arabic, version of the Quran that still has all the icky stuff in it.
Right.
But I'd argue that times do change, and even if there's hinky stuff in the Quran, that most people do not live according to the hinkiest precepts.
Well, but the reason is this, okay? Wait, by the way, you keep interrupting me. I don't get to finish my point.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, here's the deal. in in the Judeo-Christian tradition, there were reformations. There are dates and times when they decided, you know what, let's not do this anymore. This is a bad idea. In the Islamic religion, there never was a reformation. They're not allowed to have a reformation. You know what happens if you try to reform a verse out of the Quran? They kill you. It's blasphemy.